a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
And over this next hour, you might like to join in our conversation. I'll invite you to do so. Shortly, we'll open our talkback lines. You know, we're in an election season, and we're always concerned on 2020 about how Christians evaluate policies in contrast to those timeless biblical values. Aligning your biblical values to the way you vote might transform the way you think about where Australia is heading. Well, the next election's coming up. Just ahead, there's one on in the ACT on the 19th of October. And then the Queensland state election is on the 26th of October. So where are Christian values most significantly being promoted in a political context? You might say, who's out there talking about anything to do with Christian values? Well, in Western Australia, you still have the Australian Christians, and they've weathered all the political storms over the past 5 years or so, and they remain afloat. But in the rest of the nation, eyes have turned with hope and expectation to the performance of the reborn, reformed Family First Party. Lyle Shelton is National Director of the recently rebirthed Family First political party, and you'll know Lyle Shelton from his history leading the Australian Christian lobby. And through all of those years of turmoil in the marriage debate, and for more than 20 years, in fact, Lyle's been a key participant in Australia's culture wars, and he's our guest through this coming hour. Hey Lyle, a special welcome back to 2020.
Neil, thank you so much. It's great to be with you, and I really appreciate your very generous warm introduction.
Before we get into some things to do with, Australian politics and Christians and our values and where they fit with the context of a lot of policies, you might have overheard us talking with Wendy Francis, who's getting to the point where she's going to hang up the gloves. Perhaps the official fight might be over, although she did say she's still going to be keeping on going in all sorts of other informal capacities. But she did reflect on so many years with the Australian Christian lobby, and your name came up a time or two. I wonder whether you've got a thought or two just around Wendy, who's no doubt listening in right now. But, how do you reflect on her years?
Neil, it's unthinkable that Wendy Francis will no longer be involved in the political advocacy space in the same way that she has for well over a decade now. It's been a privilege of my life to have worked with Wendy in the trenches of the culture wars. We've worked together for many years at ACL, and I can't think of anyone who I esteem more highly than her as someone who's been a fearless advocate for gospel values in politics, but particularly for children, the dignity of women. She has this unique ability to build warm and effective relationships with members of Parliament like no one else I've seen. And that's been an invaluable service to the movement to try and bring Christian and family values into politics. So she's going to be sorely missed, and I certainly wish her and Peter all the best. I know they'll never stop being involved in work for the kingdom of God, but this phase of Wendy's career was coming to a close, and that's very sad at one level, but she can certainly leave knowing that she's deserves a well done and good and faithful servant, no doubt about that.
No doubt she'll appreciate those warm words. Hey, we're talking politics today, and we're talking elections. As I said in the introduction, this is an election season, and there's a high likelihood, though, and I might just start with this, that if you're watching mainstream media, any mainstream media, you probably know more about the upcoming US presidential election than you do about the more domestic elections that are happening in our states and territories. Lots of people know all about Donald Trump and the Harris challenges that are going on in the US. What are your thoughts when you get drowned out in an election cycle by some of these international stunts and very cleverly marketed politics?
Well, there's no doubt US politics dominates the globe, and with good reason to some extent, Neil, because what happens in America does affect all of us, particularly in the West. And we're seeing a contest between Kamala Harris, who is a radical extremist in terms of her views on abortion, her views on transgender issues, her views on open borders, her views on economics, and then a very flawed, Donald Trump, who, has probably some questions over his character, but has probably running with some policies which I think are really important for America and for the West. So, look, I'm watching it very closely, but it does tend to drown out other things that are important here locally. But nonetheless, I think what happens in America will affect us profoundly into next year and the years ahead. And I think if Kamala Harris wins, I think we're going to see, the Western world continue on a downward trajectory. I'm not saying Trump is the saviour, but I think his policies can certainly give all of us who are fighting in this space some breathing room, because he'll push back on the transgender stuff. He'll push back on open borders. He'll work on economic policies that will be better for families to get ahead financially, less of a tax burden, better manufacturing opportunities, all of these sort of things, which I think, Australia can, take a lesson from. He'll also push back on the damaging net zero policies, which are causing our inflation and electricity prices to go through the roof. And I think that'll provide cover for better economic policy here in Australia. So they're my thoughts on the US, Neil.
And we might talk some more about the US, but we'll try and keep our focus on things that are going on here in Australia. And with these two upcoming elections, the ACT election 19th of October, the Queensland state election 26th of October, Family First is standing candidates in both of those elections. How extensive is the opportunity for Christians to actually use our preference system to be able to give some level of acknowledgement to the presence there of Family First?
Yeah, look, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Neil. Look, if you take, both of those jurisdictions, Queensland and the ACT, only have a lower house. They don't have upper houses, which really provide the opportunity for minor parties like ourselves. But we decided to run in both Queensland and the ACT so that we could use any leverage that we might get from the votes that people give us to help shape outcomes. So because there are very few parties, almost none, that are fighting for human rights for the unborn, that are fighting for the truth about children's gender and sound economic policy when it comes to net zero, and the religious freedom issues, we think a vote for Family First and then using 1 second preference for the party of their choice, that sends a huge message to politics that there's a constituency out there who values these things, and it's certainly not a wasted vote. A vote for Family First and a vote for the number 2 party of your choice actually doubles the power of your vote, because it tells politics and politicians that there's people out there who care about the things that they're trying to suppress. And that's the most important thing I think we can do as values-based Christian conservative voters at both of these elections.
Now, just of recent years, while you've been at the helm of Family First, there has been some elections that you've fought in, I think, South Australia and in Victoria, and I think in New South Wales, but you've come close to getting over the line and having a candidate elected, but just fallen short there on a number of occasions. Is there any optimism, or what is the possibility of getting a candidate across the line, say, in the state of Queensland?
It's very difficult in Queensland. You're right, we came very close to getting 3 of our people elected in Victoria and 1 in South Australia. And again, that's because those states have an upper house, and the way the voting works there and the opportunity for preferences, it's a much more rich environment than lower house races. So Queensland is a unicameral parliament, only 1 house, same with the ACT. So we know that it's very difficult. Unless you've got a high-profile celebrity type candidate who can win a lot of primary votes, you need at least 25% of the primary vote. It's difficult to win a lower house seat. But nonetheless, we're running because we want to lift the profile of Family First. We want to elevate the importance of the issues that we are concerned about, which the other parties are suppressing and will not talk about. And we're building for the future. So in the long run, we think we can be competitive in a state like Queensland in Senate races, for instance, because the Senate being an upper house. So perhaps in 2 to 3 electoral cycles' time, as we build the brand, build the awareness that we're back as a political force, that we can certainly be competitive in Queensland, just despite the lack of the state upper house. So that's really the strategy that we're running at. And I'm so thrilled with the candidates that we have, over 50 candidates running in the Queensland election. They all know that it's difficult to win, but they're doing it very self-sacrificially because they know that this is building the profile of the party and building the profile of the issues which are being neglected.
So you've got candidates standing in the ACT, and you've got around 50 candidates that are running in the Queensland state election. And as you say, and I admire, and I think listeners will do too, admiring your honesty here, that lots of those candidates know that they will not be elected, but they are choosing, and often because of their values base, they're choosing to use the opportunity to engage in the issues, to engage in the debate, and to build the brand for Family First, no doubt because there's a view towards the next federal election when you hope to be running on all cylinders. Would that be an assessment of where you're going?
Yeah, very much so, Neil. Look, even the next federal election, it's going to be tough, and we'll make a decision about whether we run in Queensland in the federal election after the state election is done. But we're certainly running Senate campaigns in South Australia, Victoria, and here in New South Wales, where I am. But just going back to Queensland, you know, the importance of the self-sacrificial nature of our candidates there is illustrated by the fact that the Queensland LNP under David Crucifili have promised that if they're elected, they will do nothing about Queensland's horrific abortion to birth legislation. Now, that's a captain's call that Crucifili has made. He's instructed all his candidates not to talk about abortion, and they will not change the laws, which are terrible laws, over the next 4 years if they win government. Now, Family First is a pro-life party, and I know Robbie Katter has done some great work with the Born Alive bill, which we totally support. But yeah, the LNP will not touch these issues. So we are there to be their conscience, to fight for issues like religious freedom. The LNP didn't fight the Respect at Work bill, which now makes it really hard for Christian schools and churches and other organisations in terms of freedom of speech and expression at work. So there's a whole range of issues where the LNP are missing in action, and we feel it's so important that we're there putting the values on the ballot, and that's the role we can play. And, you know, it's with a view to the medium to long term. We know that we've got to start somewhere, and by turning up at elections, we can make a difference over time. And that's what our candidates have in mind. And I'm full of respect and admiration and gratitude for them for sacrificing in this way, reputationally, but also financially and with their time to put these values on the ballot.
Well, Lyle Shelton is our guest this hour. I want to open our talkback line. You might like to engage with Lyle. You might have a question. You might want to talk politics and coming from either side because, as you can hear, Lyle Shelton not afraid to put the boot in both sides because the different values that are there in the Family First political party are in contrast to the major parties who are in control of our governments. So 1-800-316-316 if you'd like to join in our conversation, 1-800-316-316. You could also text us on 0447 488 316. Include your name and location. And, of course, in the app, you can click Text In button too, and we'll see if we can get some of those thoughts to air. So 1-800-316-316. Back with more with Lyle Shelton, the National Director of the recently rebirthed Family First political party. That's coming just ahead.
The Vision app is the best place to find a growing range of homegrown, on-demand audio to help you look to God daily. You can listen to Faith and Fostering with Christians chatting about foster care in an Australian context. Plus, be encouraged by Pastor Terry Nightingale's 4-minute devotions, with new episodes added each week in the free Vision Christian Media app. If you don't already have the app on your smartphone or tablet, download it now from vision.org.au/app. Vision.org.au/app. Vision.
Sometimes it is difficult to set aside time for each other, but investing in your marriage will have a positive effect on your children, your work, and your own personal health.
Hi, we're Brett and Kate Ryan from Focus on the Family Australia. In partnership with Vision Christian Media, we want to invite you to our Journey to Us marriage retreat, October 18th to the 20th in Melbourne.
We will be exploring how to build a God-honouring marriage you'll both love. For more details and to register, go to families.org.au.
It takes a big family to keep Vision on the air across Australia. Individuals, churches and businesses. Like Camp Drew Lennox Head, a perfect place for conferences, school, church or retreat.
This is 2020 with Neil Johnson, helping you make sense of life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 on Vision.
It is an election season. We've been talking about politics and two elections that are coming up, the ACT election the 19th of October, the Queensland state election coming up the 26th of October. And of course, those might well be a preview towards a federal election, most likely early next year. Our special guest is Lyle Shelton. He's the National Director of the recently rebirthed Family First political party. You can join us 1-800-316-316 if you'd like to be part of our conversation. Before we take any calls though, Lyle, let's just ask you about Family First, because some people will be thinking, is this a Christian party, or is it a party with Christians in it, or is it a secularised party with a few Christian values? How can they be trusted? I want to know a little bit about, where they are at the core. I wonder if you've got a thought before we take any calls.
Yeah, no, thanks, Neil. Look, we're a party for people of all faiths and none, but we're very clear that our core values, and we've written this into our constitution, our core values are to promote the Judeo-Christian ethic. So we don't want to have any other philosophical base at the start of the party, but we do want the party to be available to people who share those Judeo-Christian values to participate in and to vote in. So long as they can sign on to Judeo-Christian values, and what that means for the family, the definition of male and female, of course, pro-life, all of those sort of things, and of course economic policy that will allow young people, young men and young women, to found and form families and purchase homes. They're the things that we are really interested in. So you don't have to be a Christian to be part of us, but at the moment I can tell your listeners that all of the leadership of Family First are Christian people. But we're certainly open if others want to be part of it, and certainly open if other people want to vote for us. We realise we're going to need more than the Christian vote itself. We're going to need allies who want to be fellow travellers with us to have the political impact that we need, and that will need to go beyond just Christians. And I think there's many of our fellow Australians who may not have a personal revelation of Jesus Christ, but certainly are attracted to the values that cause families and people to flourish.
And interesting, isn't it, that the name Christian is not in the party title. Those values are there, but it's not necessarily only people who ascribe to a Christian faith who do want the same values that a Christian will stand for. I think that's what you're saying around about what this party's all about. So 1-800-316-316 to join in our conversation. Let's take a call. Tim is in Redbank Creek in Queensland. Hey, Tim, welcome.
G'day, Neil. G'day, Lyle. Yes, a few comments. Just anecdotally, like when you start to talk politics with people, even people in the church, sometimes their eyes just glaze over, and I'm just astounded at the level of political illiteracy in the community. I'll just give you one example. I mean, I had a look at all the candidates for our electorate. I don't think there's a Family First candidate announced for the Nango electorate yet. Is that correct, Lyle?
I think that's right, Tim. If there's someone there that you know who's interested, we'd love to chat to them.
Yeah. Well, in light of that, I looked at all the parties, and I thought the One Nation candidate in our electorate was quite good. So I did share with a few people. I met the candidate, talked to them. I went to the state party launch just to get an idea of what their values were, and I thought, well, they seem a pretty good option among others. And I'm just disillusioned with the two-party system, namely because when I contact my local member, Deb Frecklington, contact their office about big issues, namely, the abortion, the treaty that the LNP just sort of let sail through with the Aboriginal people, the treaty, and energy policy. And I was told by the staff, I asked them why they didn't challenge Labor Party on these major issues, and I was told by the staff member that although they don't agree with those issues, they're conscious of the voters out there, and they don't want to put swinging voters off by coming out with a hardline stance against these issues. And that, for me, that spoke volumes. I thought, well,
Tim, let's give Lyle an opportunity to respond here, because you're making some good points in there, and some of this is common sense, and you're talking about your lived experience trying to engage with either government or opposition. Lyle, what are your thoughts as you hear Tim reflecting on his frustrations in his electorate?
I agree with Tim entirely, and Tim, the reason why Family First exists is for that very reason that you've encountered, is that the major parties, and used to be just Labor and the Greens, but now increasingly the LNP will not engage on issues that really matter, such as human rights for the unborn. They certainly are not engaging on protecting girls and young and women from the whole transgender agenda, whether it's putting males in their spaces or allowing children to go off to gender clinics to have their bodies mutilated. Energy policy, all the things you listed, dividing Australians by race. It seems like the LNP just want to have a small target strategy. I think we're smarter than that as people. We can be taken into the confidence of leaders, and we need leaders that'll put forward a vision for the future and to call out the things which are causing harm. And sadly, the LNP don't do that. They're just hoping to get elected, and they probably will. David Crisafulli will probably become Premier, not because he set out any vision or strategy, but because the other side are just so terrible and that people are going to vote for him by default. But that doesn't help us move the ball forward on the issues that matter. So totally agree with you, Tim. And that's why we've gone to the trouble to set up a political party to fight for these things.
Hey, Lyle, there's been a bit of a breakthrough, hasn't there? Registration of the Family First Party with the Australian Electoral Commission, and now it's sort of clear sailing towards the next federal election. How important is what has happened?
Yeah, very important. Thanks, Neil. And I don't know about clear sailing. Nothing about politics is clear sailing, and particularly getting a political party off the ground. But look, we're just thrilled that we got the news on Friday from the Australian Electoral Commission that we had passed the registration. We had to submit over 1,500 members. They cross-checked them with the electoral roll. It's quite a process. It took more than 12 months to get there, but we're just thrilled that we're now officially registered as a political party to contest federal elections. Of course, we've been registered in many of the states for a while, but now we've got federal registration. So, we're very excited by that and looking forward to fielding candidates in as many places as we can to give people a real choice in the lead up to the next election.
In fact, is there some sort of recruitment that's going on from Family First? Are you interested to talk to perhaps Christian people who have some aspiration in politics, maybe to be a part of what might be a stance in the federal election by way of being a candidate? Is that something you're looking for?
Absolutely, Neil. And look, we've got an amazing team of volunteers who are out doing that already. Jane Foreman in Victoria has already recruited over a dozen candidates for the lower house in support of our Senate candidate Bernie Finn, a former Liberal parliamentarian who was kicked out of the Liberals for being pro-life. So he's running for us in Victoria, and Jane, as his campaign manager, has already recruited many and wants more. Here in New South Wales, where I'm based, I'm running as the lead Senate candidate. Roseanne Masters is my campaign director, and she's actively recruiting at the moment. And similar case in South Australia, where Christopher Brohair is our lead Senate candidate there. So we're looking for lower house candidates in all of these three states to support the Senate bids. So yeah, if anyone's interested, they can contact us through our website. We'd love to chat.
And our conversation, not just about the Queensland state election, although we'll come back to that because there's some big looming issues that you've got some opinions on, Lyle Shelton. But when you mentioned Bernie Finn in Victoria, and he's going to be standing as your lead Senate candidate for the state of Victoria in the next federal election, because, as you say, kicked out for being pro-life. And I can't help but think of other things that are going on in Victoria. Some people around Australia are laughing and others are in dismay. Of course, the Moira Deeming John Pizzuto defamation case, that's continuing this week, and that seems to be another likely situation where the Liberals have shot themselves in the foot by dealing the way that they have so harshly with Moira Deeming. How have you been observing what's going on in Victoria around Moira Deeming?
Yeah, I've been watching it quite closely. Personally, I'm very supportive of Moira as a person. I think what's happened to her has been terrible, and I support Christians and good conservative people who will fight the fight for the values within the mainstream parties, like Moira's doing in the Liberal Party, and she's being punished for standing up for the rights of girls and women to not have biological males in their toilets or playing against them in their sports. I mean, these are issues of basic safety, and yet her leader, John Pesciuto, has smeared her as a Nazi associate. So her only recourse has been to take him to court to try and clear her name and her family's name. And I'm just appalled that John Pesciuto's legal defence is based around the idea, just having listened very carefully to the case last week and some of the live stream of the hearings, that John Pesciuto is arguing that he's on the side of the so-called trans activists. He's on the side of the biological males who Moira was trying to protect girls and women from, and suggesting that she's somehow a bit weird for thinking that men can't have a penis, and that women can't have a penis, and that those sort of men shouldn't be in women's change rooms. I'm just appalled that Pesciuto is running this line of defence. He should be supporting girls and women and supporting Moira, and not trying to smear the people who are fighting for girls and women as some kind of Nazis. I mean, it's just outrageous, but it's symptomatic of, sadly, where the Liberal Party is, not just in Victoria, but right around the country. They just don't fight for these values, apart from one or two outspoken ones, and the ones that do speak out get punished like Moira.
1800 316 316 if you'd like to engage in our conversation today. 1800 316 316. Let's take some calls. Luke is in Perth, WA. Hey, Luke, welcome.
Hi, I've got a question for Lyle. I'm in WA. Will Family First run any federal Senate seats in terms of the federal election year in WA?
Question. Question around federal Senate seats and candidates for Family First in WA. I think that's right, Luke, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lyle.
Yeah, look. Thanks, Luke. We would love to run in WA. We're still fairly new as a party, so we are fairly East Coast focused at the moment, but in time we'd love to. We're probably just not quite ready for next year's election. As Neil said earlier, likely there'll be an election early next year. Look, if there was keen people there who had the ability to get a campaign going and work with us, we might consider it. But at this stage, we are stretched a bit thin. Unfortunately, we won't be running in the state election over there, which is also due early next year. And we're certainly very supportive of the Australian Christians. Our friend Mareika Gronwald is running, and I think she's got an excellent chance of being elected to the state upper house. And we're certainly, supporting her publicly. We're not registered at the state level, and also we didn't want to do anything that would jeopardise her chances. Australian Christians have been working very faithfully for years over there in the West, and we want to honour that. And we're excited about the possibility of Mareika getting elected to the state parliament next year. But certainly in the future, Luke, we'd love to have a presence, particularly for federal Senate races, but it probably won't be for next year's election.
Luke in Perth, thanks so much for your call. Our talkback line is open on 1800 316 316. Let's take another call. Vince is in Brisbane. Hey, Vince, welcome.
Yeah. Hi, Neil. Hi, Lyle. Well, look, the issue I want to talk about, it's probably only peripherally related to family, but it's what I call the catastrophic climate change scam. I've noticed, like children, that I think have been indoctrinated thinking, the world's going to end because of, CO2, like Greta Thunberg. But I've even seen children, skipping school, and I'm so against it because I know the science behind it is bankrupt. But I also know theologically it's been used. There's been Catholic churches and Protestant churches I know in base right now over September, this season of creation scam, which I've experienced. I know it uses the science, and it's also theologically bankrupt. It even drove me to turn up at a Catholic church in Sunnybank and speak out about it. I got to talk for 30 seconds, but I was evicted at the end. But I thought at least I planted a seed. It uses Paul chapter 8, verses 19 to 25, and twists it that Paul is talking about Mother Earth groaning. And I spoke to a friend who studies the Bible incessantly. He says that's not the case. That's not what it's. So the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, who said any religion is a path to God, my friend said, no, that's false teaching, false doctrine. I'd just like to know where you stand on that.
Vince, you know what? There's a whole big can of worms in everything you've been saying there. But let's stay with perhaps the climate change issues rather than just mixing this up with around the Catholic Church. Thoughts from you, Lyle, on climate change? And yes, there's some extremes in the climate change debate. Thoughts here for Vince?
Yeah, Vince, I think the whole climate change debate has taken on religious overtones, not just in the Catholic Church, but it's become a new secular religion. It's become a new form of pantheism, which is a pagan religion. I'm all for protecting the planet. I think we should be the best environmental stewards there are, and Christians should be at the forefront of that. Personally, I have some concerns about the evidence that is put forward around climate change. No one can explain to me why the climate changed in the medieval warming period or the Roman warming period, and which is, that's all well known and documented. We didn't have internal combustion engines or coal-fired electricity back in those days. So there's some mysteries to me in this whole thing. I certainly don't believe that we're in danger of climate collapse or that there's an existential threat, and therefore I think it's wrong for us to be recalibrating our whole economy in such a radical way to deindustrialise, decarbonise, and certainly, Family First is very much against the whole net zero push because we are vandalising our ability to provide reliable and affordable electricity by getting rid of our coal and gas way too quickly when we don't have alternatives that work. And renewables do not work. You can watch our chairman, Tom Kenyon's speech to our national conference. It's on our YouTube channel, but we've laid out why we think that renewables are not working. And of course, they're making electricity more expensive, and that's making the cost of everything more expensive. And that, of course, is driving our cost of living crisis. So I think we've got economic vandals that are running our energy and economic policy. And sadly, both sides of politics recklessly have signed on to net zero without looking at the consequences of rapidly decarbonising an economy and the impacts that has, particularly on middle class and lower middle class people.
Vince in Brisbane, thanks so much for your comment. 1-800-316-316 to join in our conversation. Let's take another call. Lindsay is in Jerramungup in WA. Hey, Lindsay, welcome.
Hi, thank you. How are you both?
Doing well. What are your thoughts, Lindsay?
Right. I was just wondering if Lyle could tell me where his party stands on the live sheep export.
Okay, live sheep. Lyle, what's the Family First policy here?
Lindsay, to be honest, we haven't actually worked out a policy, but I'll go out on a limb and tell you my personal view, and that is I'm very supportive of the live sheep export trade. Obviously, it needs to be done humanely. I've got a friend who's a Christian vet up in the northwest of Western Australia. He's been on live cattle boats, looking after the welfare of the animals. Obviously, there's been problems in the past, but that's not a reason to shut down the whole industry. And, I'm in favour of our agricultural industries and the ability to export live animals so long as it's done humanely.
Lindsay, anything further to add?
No, thank you. God bless you both, and God's blessings on the election coming up, that you win every seat that you put forward.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. 1-800-316-316 to join in our conversation. Let's take another call. Chris is in Melbourne. Hey, Chris, welcome.
G'day, Neil and Lyle. Yeah, I'm just want to get your opinion. The UN just had a summit, Pact for the Future summit, where they voted for more global governance. I mean, I'm just wondering whether political parties will be obsolete because their sustainable future, like the future caller said, they've voted on all those things to implement those, the 2030 agenda. So only 7 countries abstained: Russia, Iran, Belarus, North Korea, Nicaragua, Sudan, and Syria. All the rest voted for total, UN, global governance.
Chris, good thought. Lyle, your thoughts for Chris?
Yeah, Chris, totally against. We're totally against global governance. We believe in sovereign nations. Obviously, there should be multilateral cooperation, and there's a place for the United Nations, but certainly not in interfering with the affairs of a sovereign nation like Australia. I've had the privilege of being involved with the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, the ARC conference that took place in London last year, and there's another one coming up. John Anderson, former Deputy Prime Minister, heavily involved with Jordan Peterson and others, and it's very much set up to try and counter some of these globalist trends that are coming through the World Economic Forum and the UN, and to present a better vision for the future and tell a better story. And that's certainly where Family First sits. We certainly don't want the UN, overriding our democracy in any way, shape, or form. And that's why it's so important that we do get involved in politics. This is happening because we've set and forgotten about our politics, and we've let other people run it. We've drifted, and we've allowed these globalists to overreach into our politics, and we've got to push back really hard.
Chris in Melbourne, thank you so much for your call. 1800 316 316 to ask a question, and no holds barred. Lyle Shelton is our guest, and he leads the more recently rebirthed Family First. They're standing 50 candidates in the upcoming Queensland state election. They've also got candidates in the ACT election. But 1800 316 316. Bob is in Mackay in Queensland. Hi, Bob. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Bob, what are your thoughts?
Neil, I really wanted to talk to you. When you get guests on there with extreme views, it'd be good if you challenge them, especially when they come up with things like renewable power is more expensive, or net zero is a mistake, or we're getting too carried away with climate change.
Bob, I take your comment there, and I appreciate it. And, I'm not beyond criticism either. I think that when it comes to all of the issues around climate change, there are divided opinions within the Christian community, but the challenge there is that if you're a part of the Christian community and you decide to adopt a whole radical left-wing agenda that goes along with your climate position, you've probably jumped across a bridge too far. So that would be where I'd be thinking about those sorts of issues. And yes, challenging, and I'm not sure whether our guest will see himself as extremist, because when we talk about the sorts of policies, values and positions as we do, and from a Christian perspective on this program, we're always looking for a biblical foundation for those sorts of perspectives, and oftentimes that puts a fire hose on the fires of fear that are often promoted around a lot of the issues. I'll come back to Lyle Shelton. Lyle, your thoughts here for Bob, as he's been concerned about those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, I appreciate Bob's comment, and certainly, like you, Neil, I never want to be beyond criticism. Always happy to have a debate, but I've studied the energy debate for many years now and read a lot. And as I mentioned, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship conference that I attended in London last year, some really smart people were there talking about energy and whether renewables could actually power modern economies. And I think anyone who's looking at the engineering and the economics of solar panels and windmills and battery storage, which doesn't exist in terms of what's needed for a modern city, let alone industry, I think it's clear that renewables are very much found wanting. That's not an extreme view. That's a view that many thinking people have come to in recent times, and there's growing concern that we are really damaging our economy really, really badly by this rush to renewables. And if we want low emissions electricity, then nuclear is really the only viable opportunity there. But I still think there's probably room for coal and gas for a number of years, certainly as part of a transition to a nuclear economy. But I think there's no doubt that solar panels and windmills and battery technology, which is not developed anywhere near enough for big cities and industry, they cannot do the job. And this is why our electricity prices keep going up and up and up, and will continue to do so until the lights go out and we have to get back to a more reliable and affordable source.
Bob in Mackay, great to hear from you. Thanks so much for your input. And let's take one more call. Time's escaping us. Karen is in Slacks Creek in Queensland. Hey, Karen, welcome.
Hi.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, I got a few thoughts, actually. How long have you got?
Well, I think you better hit us with the main thought. We're running out of time here, but what's the main thing that you'd like to air?
Two things then, main things, that the climate change farcical thing, if you see Climate Change, the movie made by researchers, they completely debunk all of what we've been told. Okay, jumping to the next thing, and I know this doesn't sound related, but it is. In Guatemala, a few years ago, a girlfriend at church testified to this yesterday, that the country was turned around where the criminals were used to run the whole country. She visited a family who couldn't go out. It was too dangerous. People were shot in the street, murdered in front of people, terrible. This country turned around, and a reporter said, how did this happen to the new incoming leaders? And they said, you want the short answer? We prayed. And then, of course, changes happened. They outlawed this, that and the other. They gave an amnesty. They jailed 70,000 criminals over 5 years, turned the country around. It is a safe place to be. And I just want to say to Australia, please get on your knees before God. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. And that's my cry for Australia.
Karen, good thoughts there, and clearly Australia is on a trajectory going downhill right now when it's coming to values and becoming less secure because of some of these laws that are ready to cause criminality to those who are just wanting to stand for righteousness. And no doubt, if anyone's looking at some of the history of Western civilization, you'll know that some of the things that we actually enjoy as the West, some of the law and order and the way we treat one another is because of Christian faith that has become the foundation. But let's get a thought here from our guest, Lyle Shelton, a thought here for Karen in Slacks Creek.
Yeah, I agree with Karen. I think we need to start with prayer, and we do need to cry out to God for our nation. I think that's the humble thing to do. But I also believe in prayer and action. Faith without works is dead. So, yes, let's keep praying, but let's get involved as well.
Karen in Slacks Creek, thanks so much for your call. And time is now running out, Lyle Shelton. And there's two elections coming up. The ACT election, we haven't talked much about the ACT election. Some people say it's just so far to the left in the ACT. There's no likelihood of much change. I don't know whether you've got any thoughts there, but a quick thought on the ACT election coming up?
Well, look, it is the most anti-family and anti-faith jurisdiction in Australia. We saw the government there, compulsorily steal a Catholic hospital and rip the cross off it because the Catholic hospital wouldn't do abortions or euthanasia. So it's a hostile environment. That's why I really admire the 11 candidates that have put up their hand for Family First. They know, like in Queensland, difficult to get elected, but they're doing it to fly the flag for the values, because we have to start somewhere. Sitting back and doing nothing is not an option. So I'm in admiration, and look, they're helping, pave the way for a better future. But this is just the start, in my humble opinion.
Now, you did mention there is a big breakthrough. There is registration with the Australian Electoral Commission, and Family First is ready for the federal election that's coming early next year. When there are state elections coming, and there'll be another state election in Western Australia next year, and there's people within your organisation there at Family First who are on the lookout for people who are going to be supporters and even candidates to stand in electorates right around Australia. What's your encouragement? Because I remember just one of the earlier comments that one of the listeners made is that they were absolutely concerned with the ignorance that oftentimes happens in church life. People are just not interested in the politics. There's people who think that politics should be separate from our faith. What are your thoughts here for people connecting with Family First and even become part of the processes?
Well, people may not be interested in politics, and churches may not be interested in politics, but I tell you what, politics is sure interested in you, and it's coming after your children and for your freedom right away. So my encouragement to everyone is get involved. We still have a democracy. We still have the freedom to register a political party, to hold meetings, to stand candidates, and to engage the tools of democracy. That's what we're trying to do at Family First. And the alternative is to be ruled by godless people. That's not an alternative that I'm liking at the moment, and so we're seeking to change that. So we'd encourage everyone, go to the Family First website, sign up as a supporter or as a member, and become part of the answer to the problems that we're seeing politically in this nation.
Well, Lyle Shelton, I look forward to having some more conversations like this in the lead up to the elections that are just ahead. And I know that listeners will be very much appreciative of the fact that you're not afraid to put the boot in both sides when it comes to the Labor Party or the Liberal National Party. Not afraid to put the boot in because when we're getting a contrast between what values are being presented in our political systems from both of the major parties compared to what we might understand as a Christian foundation for our values, there's a big difference, and some might say it's a growing gulf. But for listeners to connect with Lyle Shelton, you can do so through the familyfirstparty.org.au, familyfirstparty.org.au. And Lyle, I guess that's going to be a place where people can get resources to understand where the Family First Party is going. There'll be regular articles and updates on the issues that are mattering to the Family First following. So that's familyfirstparty.org.au. Lyle Shelton, I'll just point people to a book you wrote a little while back. I kid you not, Notes from 20 Years in the Trenches of the Culture Wars. If you think that Lyle Shelton's just a newcomer to being involved in the battle and rolling his sleeves up, and you can check out that book. There's a lot of history there, a lot of fights that Lyle has been involved in the past. Lyle Shelton, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts today with 2020.
Thank you, Neil. It's been a privilege to be with you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.